Hey, what is going on, guys? This is the SS Ultimate Goku back with another video, and today I'm going to be talking about I'm going to be returning the buy or sell series um, back. We have done a bunch of buy or sells in the past for you guys to check out as well, but we're bringing it back, so make sure to ask your questions, or not ask your question. Make sure to comment and for any different buy or sells I might potentially do. I might look back at some of the questionnaires about ones that I want to bring that I never got to do from past episodes, but nonetheless, the series is returning. And buy or sell format is very simple. We're buying and selling based on, you know, what we think was the better one of the two. Um, and, based off of the two categories of the people that or thing that is the candidates for this. So for today's buy or sell, we have Anastasia Romanoff and Pocahontas. For anybody who doesn't know, these are the two modern characters, so to speak, that were popular in the 90s. In the 90s, when the Disney Renaissance was going on, and it's very important with these characters is that they were based off of real life stories and or even to a certain extent real life tragedies. Anastasia Romanoff was based off of the tragic events that happened of the collapse of the Russian Empire, which led to the creation of the Soviet Union ultimately. And then, of course, there's Pocahontas, who was legitimately a real Native American. She died at a young age, and there's a lot of backstory on her as well. So Disney and 20th Century Fox, which now 20th Century Fox is now owned by Disney, made these movies. And I believe Pocahontas came out in '95, and Anastasia had come out in '97, and to a lot of surprise, this was Anastasia was the first movie for Fox Animation, and it was a huge success. Of course, it ended up coming crashing down a couple of years later after a huge bomb movie in 2000, but nonetheless, no one can hide the fact of what Anastasia did for Fox. It was one of their best movies in the in that past decade. So it did very well for itself and pretty much competed with the Disney Renaissance that was going on at the time. It's one of the few only movies that had Disney Renaissance numbers. That was a non-Disney movie. And a lot of people have often mistaken it as a Disney movie because of its success. But now it actually is a Disney movie because of the recent purchase from 20th Century Fox being outright purchased by Disney. But that's not the discussion here. Pocahontas again came out in '95. Again, based off of Native American culture and colonizings, as well as colonies events, which is where it takes place pre-United States era. And again, both pretty good stories. Obviously, both are fictional. the stories that are told in their movies are 100% fabricated, but they do give a good story for the kids, which is the point. Um, I honestly don't know why people complain about real life stories being based on real life stories being implemented into fiction, and to complain about them doing different stuff that just isn't culturally appropriate. Pocahontas, obviously, the real Pocahontas was actually, I think, like 12 or 11. I believe they made her like 18 or 19 in the movie, for obvious reasons. Um, and with Anastasia, they kind of, well, with Anastasia, they kind of riffed completely in the timeline. She started out as 8 because it was in 1916, and then there was a 10-year time skip, where she was now 18 years old because it was 10 years later, and that's where the majority of the movie takes place, is when she's 18. The real Anastasia actually died in 1917, I believe it was, and she, I believe, was 17. So she was already dead by this point. But again, the movie is not supposed to be the real thing. And they kind of go into a really cool story and a what if scenario. She was the Grand Duchess because she lived. Obviously, in reality, she didn't live, but in this movie, she is the Grand Duchess because if she had lived, she would have been the Grand Duchess because she would have been the last descendant that was alive from the Romanovs. So, they both have their own, interesting stories they tell. They both have musicals because, again, they both followed the Disney format, including Anastasia, which was a Fox movie, but it followed the Disney format, which is why it was successful, because that was what they were going for. Pocahontas did have a sequel. Anastasia did not. Technically, the animal bat did, but I don't really count that because Anastasia wasn't involved with that, and that was a prequel before the events of the Anastasia movie, where the Pocahontas one was actually after it. Pocahontas kind of goes in a fictional direction. Pocahontas getting with John Smith at the end of the movie. Obviously, they have a sequel where she actually gets with the canonized person that Pocahontas actually had a relationship with, John Rolfe. But or not really a relationship with, or at least knew of him. Well, actually no, because weren't they married? Yeah, they were married. So yeah, they technically did. But I didn't really like the sequel they did. But in terms of this buy or sell, is which one had the better adaptation? In my opinion, I'm buying Anastasia and I'm selling Pocahontas, because I think Anastasia told a better story. They didn't miss around the bush with certain elements like Pocahontas did. There was a lot of things that were inaccurate with Pocahontas, which is to be expected, since it is a fictional movie and it's for kids. But at the same time, um, there was a lot of inaccurate things that were very noticeable. You know, noticeable, even for kid standards. If you know the story of Pocahontas, but again, it is a kid's story, but just a lot of mistakes. And then of course the whole thing with John Smith. They retconned that in the sequel, which personally I think was stupid because again, it is a fictional story. But if you're gonna go with that, then just go with it. At that point, Anastasia doesn't have any sequels, like I said, but Anastasia, while it is inaccurate to her fate because obviously she doesn't make it out in real life, but in this story she does. But they do have a lot of respect for a lot of the stuff that was going on in Russia at the time, and it seemed like they tried to implement more of, Russia's culture and whatnot into there. A lot of the songs were specifically toned for a Russian type of deal. Um, for dialogues, the meanings behind it and whatnot. And they were very, very appropriate with a lot of the elements for these characters, and did, I think, a little better homework with Russian culture compared to Pocahontas, where Pocahontas, really, I don't think they did as much Native American culture as they could have done for that movie. Not to say it was bad, but I just don't think it did as well as Anastasia did, and also it overall did make more. Anastasia overall did make more money than Pocahontas, too, for its time. Um, Again, it's only a 2 year span, a 2 year breakup from one another, but it definitely had the better vibe and definitely the better element for one another, and it had a better feeling ending, especially for the closure you wanted from it. I felt like it delivered better. Better villain too, in my opinion. Um, you know, they just used the stereotype colony guy, and not a very good one at that. Where Anastasia, they, Rasputin, even though Rasputin was like a real person, and as we all know, was a nutcase. But the way they incorporated him, I think, was a little better. Probably wouldn't be allowed today for a kids movie because they did kind of go out there with it, but nonetheless, still, I think a better way to go with it. Anastasia also shows better empowerment with it in the movie. She getting the big finish, in the fight. So yeah, that's my take on this. I'd buy Anastasia, I'd sell Pocahontas, and in terms of which one was better, I would say Anastasia. I will be doing more of these, but that's where I take this. Make sure to comment down below if you agree or disagree, and also to make sure for future buy or sells, I will take some requests, but I do want to have my own. I want to put out my own ideas as well for this, so keep that in mind as well. But nonetheless, we will be doing more of this. Comment rate. Again, a lot of my non-subscribers are watching, so please to make sure to subscribe and hit the bell for all the notifications. Like, comment, and make sure to go to all those other links in the description as well. I am the SS Ultimate Goku, and I'm out of here. Peace!